the dark, it's time to rave.
When you are in your studio,
Mm-hmm.
right? I remember there were no excuses. So which is a good thing. It's a good thing. I saw your
Mm-hmm.
face for a second. I was
Yeah.
like, no, when I say no excuses, I mean specifically we have to have that experience of knowing what it's like to work tirelessly
Mm-hmm.
for hours on end at the best of our abilities and still know that sometimes it's just not going to be good enough.
Mm-hmm. Right, right.
But
Mm-hmm.
what's funny is after doing it for so long, it is second nature.
Mm-hmm.
And you develop like this ability as a person to be coachable,
Mm-hmm.
to be proud, to recognize. I think that's another thing is recognize that there are improvements, and that's an important part of the process. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, when you talk about holding people accountable, I have noticed what that makes me think of is how you mentioned earlier the back of my day type of people.
Mm-hmm.
I work with a lot of people because I am the youngest person on the team. I have been in the last 5, 6 years doing my career because that's how it is.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who have been so used to living in their one field and eventually being in an environment where they always feel like they're right, which is a big thing I think normal industry struggles with in the workforce. That when a young person comes in and recognizes a discrepancy in the policy,
Mm-hmm.
things that can be reworded, there are a lot of just useless arguments because people's egos get hurt over. And sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
sit there a lot,
Right.
almost every day. I'm like, why are things taken so personal here?
Right, right.
Like there is a mission, a goal, and one thing that bugs me is knowing that it is not normal. I don't know if it ever was, but it's not normal at least anymore. For people to want to strive in excellence in accomplishing the mission. So then you lose communication, then you lose teamwork,
Mm-hmm.
and then when I see a lot of issues that are occurring and that arise both between team and professionally when it comes down to discrepancies with the actual focus.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like this never had to get this far, this never had to
Mm-hmm.
happen. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I feel like it's simple to talk about, but as you mentioned earlier, it's not easy.
No,
And after so
no.
many years of people building up to that mindset of comfort and lacking all the things that we were just talking about,
Mm-hmm.
it has really sad repercussions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this will bring me into one of the things that I did want to talk to you about is let's talk about mindset. Let's
Uh-huh.
talk about specifically imagination and creativity.
Mm-hmm.
I think also going into that, this can be in the range of emotion,
Mm-hmm.
recognizing your ability as a person, understanding that you're going to feel anger, you're going to feel sadness, jealousy, all the things that people try to, in a normal type of environment nowadays, act like is not normal or shouldn't exist. It is normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's who you are. How do you feel these inner workings when it comes down to imagination, creativity, and emotions impact and should impact who we are today and how we work? Like, do you feel like I feel like it's a general question, and
Mm-hmm.
in many ways we have touched it already, but specifically, let me narrow it down. Holding on to the imagination and creativity when you go from an environment like this
Mm-hmm.
to, oh crap, I'm an adult now. I need to go out in the real world.
Well, I think that can translate into it may not be creativity in the sense of you're creating dance choreography, you know? Um, but however, I feel like that definitely transfers into, and I haven't been in like your type of corporate environment in a while, you know? I'm mainly surrounded by other people who either work in this business or do this. But I think that that is so important, though, like kind of what you were touching on, not going against the old ways, but having new ideas. So I think it translates into your approach in whatever business you're in because you've had that kind of creativity instilled in you and celebrated in you for so long that if you have an idea, you have the ability to come up with something that may not have been thought about before. Or hey, here's a different way. Why don't we do that? You know, that creative thinking or just doing things that might have been done a certain way for a long time in a whole different way because that's how you grew up, just coming up with creative ideas or being part of creativity and a creative process. I think that translates to other environments as well.
Yes, thank you. You said it perfectly. Whether it's arithmetic thinking, logical thinking,
Mhm.
like, and that was the exact point that I want to be made. And I'm also glad that you recognize that you, yes, despite the fact that you have been in the entrepreneur realm for the last over
Mhm.
20 years, that is one thing that I have noticed 100% is, you know, I guess some people can call it thinking outside the box.
Right.
It's very dangerous to be close-minded and one-sided all the time. And
Hmm.
just because, you are living in a policy-driven, old thinking-driven world where, hey, um, since we've been saying that a degree is what's used to determine someone's mental capacity and
Right.
intellectual ability, that's how it should be. There has been a lack of, and we are starting to see a shift in that, but it's
Yeah.
such a like fight against the brick wall, which is unbelievable. And I think that it's the lack of open-minded, creative
Hmm.
thinking, like realizing there are numerous ways to,
I do think too, this just occurred to me as you were saying that, that because I did work in TV news for a couple of years. And I think that part of my, like, the reason that that didn't quite work out for me or that I just realized that's not where I wanted to go was because I had my own ideas about, well, I think that this should be done this way or why aren't we doing it this way? And I think that that is because even as a child growing up, I was always encouraged to be creative and come up with my own ideas. And I was just always that child that, like, I mean, even when I was 8, I did a solo. My mom let me choose the costume, which it was full 80s Madonna moment. So I'm not sure that was the best, but I mean, she really allowed me to just go with what, like, I wanted. I knew what I wanted to look like. I knew the clothes I wanted to wear. I knew how I wanted my hair. And so as a child and then of course, into high school, I was always allowed to express myself and express those, what the views I had and that kind of thing, which, and I think that that led me to really, like I said, being confident and having a really secure sense of self. And so in that environment where I wasn't dancing anymore, I was working in, I mean, really a corporate environment. I just kept feeling like, oh, I feel like this could be better. I feel like, and that wasn't my role at the time, but I just kind of feel like that led me to kind of wanting to do what I knew, which I knew dance, I knew teaching, and just kind of move in a different path where I could kind of do things the way I wanted to and kind of have my own voice in how things were done. So I do think that, and even I'm thinking about that as a teacher and here, allowing, empowering. I just
Yes.
love that. That's kind of where I am right now, just empowering our teachers to kind of do that. And, our students, empowering them to have a voice too, instead of it's always me kind of pushing and driving. I'm trying to do that more and kind of involve them. And we involve them in the creative process sometimes too. So, I just think looking back, a lot of that, because sometimes I ask my mom, why did you let me, have the mullet, the perm in the back and the because I did, and that was an 80s thing. But she was just like, you had very clear ideas about all of that. And she just really allowed me to do it. And my teachers too, growing up. I mean, I would come in and say, even my teachers at school, I would come in and say, hey, can I perform for the second grade today or tomorrow? I'll bring the music. And they let me do, I mean, they really let me do that. And it seems kind of crazy now, and I don't know that we do that much anymore. But, and I remember going into my studio and telling my teacher, I choreographed something. Can I show the class? And I've had students do that before, and I tried to, let them do that because it's just important to allow them to have their own voice too. And then that way, when they are no longer dancing, they might be in the corporate environment, they might be in whatever workforce environment, they have that sense of self to go, you know what, I have my own ideas and maybe I can contribute to this, or have a more team collaboration because they're used to that team collaboration. I just think all of that really, whether we realize it or not, obviously I didn't as a child. Now I do. It comes into play more than I think we realize. just how we allow children and young people to express themselves and have a voice, you know?
Yes, no, absolutely. And I couldn't have said it better myself because I feel like I have been trying to say that for like the last 2 years now on the podcast. But every time I go back and listen to what I'm saying, I'm like, I under, I'm like, okay, I hear what I said, but that deeper explanation, the way that
Mhm.
you just, and I think a lot of that does come from your experience and your time. So I appreciate that. So we'll say one last thing before
Mhm.
we're going to close this out because this
Mhm.
has been phenomenal, Miss Heidi. Um, the first thing is, so would you say we're gonna close out this conversation? The recognition of allowing a child's mind, even an adult, because you're never too old to dance. Let's break
Right.
that stigma real
For sure.
quick.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But specifically for children, because their minds are like a sponge. I read in my Psychology 101 course that the young brain during that period when it's in development is the most important period because they're like sponges. And that's why it's actually extremely unhealthy to give a young kid an iPad and say, here, leave me alone, or whatever.
Mhm.
Or they need to be creative. They
Mhm.
need to be adventurous. They need to learn
Uncomfortable sometimes.
very much,
Yeah,
but they also need to be safe.
sure.
So you,
Yes, absolutely.
if I'm understanding this correctly, you recognized the importance of a child's adventurous mind and the need to be creative. Because yes, that has only gotten worse as time
Hmm.
goes on. I've noticed parents are really don't leave the house, don't go outside, don't do this.
And it's more
Uh,
important than ever to fill time with either, creative outlets, whether it's dance or, art or um, playing a musical instrument or sports, whatever it is. It's really important now more than ever, I think,
yes.
to maybe not overspend their time, like not overschedule, but to definitely have those activities and communities outside of the home and the iPad and the phone. And yeah,
Yes,
for sure.
that's what I wanted to recognize
Hmm.
is I don't want anybody to think that we're saying that laws and policies and rules and discipline and strictness is not important.
Oh no,
But
no, no, no.
we
It's
have
definitely.
definitely gotten extremely one-sided. It's like with anything in this world. I truly do believe, Miss Heidi, Aristotle has like this horizontal bar. This was actually my sociology 101 course. And you can always have not enough of something or too
Hmm.
much of something.
Hmm.
There's like an equilibrium for everything. Like
Hmm.
you can be so far from being brave that you're a coward, but you can also be so brave that you're an idiot. Like
Hmm.
each one
Right,
has negative repercussions. So,
right.
and I think it's like that with everything, especially on a cultural type issue where you can
Hmm.
have so many laws and policies that, I mean, there's going to be a revolution, a riot, or people are, living like China. We don't want that, but we also don't want, so much free will that then evil and people's crazy like we're blowing each other up because people are trying to make homemade god knows what. That's a very drastic example for this topic, but that's my point is there has to be all of it. We're not
Hmm.
saying, I want to make it clear that we're not saying for debate purposes that one is more important than the other,
No,
but we're
balance
recognizing the
is important.
importance, yes,
Hmm.
in all of it. So thank you so much for sharing that, Miss Heidi. The last thing I want to ask you about, and this also is another thing I've noticed is a huge, at least in my experience, difficult thing to balance, and it has been for years in the American culture. Business, doing entrepreneurship, and any experience you remember as a woman.
Hmm.
I say this because I had just recently interviewed New York Times bestseller Aurora Asher because I loved her book. She talked about that. I have talked with the owner of Stella's and Blind Tiger now for Huntsville City. I don't know if you've heard of any of those places. And she was explaining, it's a huge issue when you walk in the room as a woman and how you're approached and stuff in dance and choreography. And I think this is kind of unique because as a man that was doing dance, I was the
You were
one
the
who,
one. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
I would go to school and,
Right.
because I wasn't, big, it
Hmm.
was, you're probably gay. And that was a big struggle of mine because I wasn't.
Hmm.
And I was like, why are people, and people would be so mean about
Hmm.
it, even kind of now, like,
Hmm.
like when I was in basic training, they called me Twinkle Toes because why are you stretching so much? Oh, I did ballet. Oh, and that's the immediate reaction for
Right.
the for the stereotypical, I'm
Just
hardcore.
ignorance again of not really understanding what all is involved.
Absolutely.
Right.
But then they're like, oh, how are you so flexible? How are
Mm-hmm.
your joints stuff so healthy? How are you doing this? Why do you have such a good understanding? Francisco
Mm-hmm.
was huge on that. And
Mm-hmm.
anyway,
And
I
a
am
great
gonna have him on the
example.
podcast.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So without getting on too far that topic,
Mm-hmm.
as a woman, Miss Heidi, do you experience challenges in how you approach whether it's talking to like when you had your expansion, maybe talking to contractors or making any business deals or when you are having your showcase at the end of the year? I've heard you having to put some foot downs a few times. Do you think
Um,
that has anything to do with any of that?
well, in general, because of the industry I'm in, it is very female dominant. So I feel like as far as being a studio owner and interacting with other studio owners, that's definitely not an issue. We're all in the same boat, and it's actually it's actually really nice, And here in town, I'm friends with the majority of the studio owners. I know them very well. We have a great camaraderie. So it's a wonderful opportunity for women in this business to collaborate and work together. So as far as that part goes, no, I haven't experienced that. And honestly, I just feel like, again, I'll go back to the way I was raised. I was raised that I never doubted that as a girl or as a young woman, I could do anything.
Fascinating.
My mom was one of definitely, I'll just say my biggest role model. She was a school teacher, then assistant principal, and a successful principal of a school for many years. So my role model was the leader in her workplace, and growing up, that's the best example you can have. So and I had my dance teacher who she still is in business 60 years later, started her studio at age 20 ish in the 60s, and I had her. I mean, she was a very strong woman in business. So I just never grew up with the idea that, I mean, why couldn't I do whatever it is I wanted to do? So that was a huge blessing for me. I know that's not always, I think now probably it's more like that, but I know in the past it hasn't always been that way. I just think too, I have never really carried myself or gone into any kind of business situation feeling like I was, I don't know, less than or I guess without confidence.
I would actually not expect any less from you, Miss Heidi.
So I don't, I've certainly had a couple of instances where maybe someone tried a little bit of that with me, of just, I can think of one in particular. I won't go into the details where someone alluded to the fact that I couldn't make the decision, that maybe I needed to ask my husband, who is also, involved in businesses. We're partners, and that's wonderful. But I certainly could make the decision. But so that's very few and far between. Like for as many years as I've been in business, I just think it's how you approach the situation. And like I said, people may see me and think, oh, whatever they may think, or she doesn't know what she's doing, but I think pretty quickly you can establish that you do. And that kind of, in my experience, stops any kind of preconceived idea someone might have based on the fact that I'm a woman or I'm 5 feet tall or, whatever, whatever it is.
As a 5'4" man, I understand.
Because I mean, I do think there is still that kind of stereotype of, but I really, I just don't have any examples of that. Like I said, maybe a couple, but pretty quickly it was established that no, I definitely could make the decisions and handle whatever needs to be handled. Not to say that I don't go I mean, a lot of people for advice, and I'll be the first person to say, accounting, for example, to the accountant, I don't know what I'm doing in this. I need your expertise. So, there is that too. But no, I mean, I just don't, I've had the benefit of growing up in a home and in a dance studio where I saw women in charge. And that just kind of determined or was the example to me that there's no reason a woman can't be the leader or the business owner or, whatever it is. And I really try to model that for everybody here, whether it's like I said, our teachers. I have a wonderful office manager now, and I try to empower her to do so much because she's so good at it. Um, and just showing young women in particular that you can do anything you set your mind to, and whatever goal it is that you have, just do it with integrity and, like you said, empathy more and more, and come from a place of love, and you can do anything. But you can also mean business, and make those things happen because, and have confidence. We talk a lot because, sometimes it's hard for or a struggle for young women sometimes to have confidence and keep confidence. And I
Very
tell them
true.
all the time, it's okay to be confident. It's okay to know that you're good at something. It's okay to have that air about you, as long as you know that you're striving to be a good person, you're trying to be respectful to people, and you're trying to do the right thing. It's okay to have confidence. It's okay to have goals and to work toward those things. So, um, I'm very fortunate that I had those examples. And I think that's kind of what led me to that. And I know a lot of people have struggled with that, those perceptions in certain environments. But just in our environment, I just haven't. And a lot of it may be just because it is mainly female dominant in this industry.
Understood. And that also doesn't mean one thing I've noticed. That also does not mean that it's not competitive because
Mhm.
it is very
It's very competitive.
competitive.
Hmm.
Um, Thank you so much for sharing that perception because that's one, especially with social media now, the hate sells,
Hmm.
negativity sells,
Hmm.
fear mongering
Hmm.
sells. And I like, I want more of that to be explained that A, not only is it possible, but B, there are strong women who can lead other women
Hmm.
without having to yell,
Hmm.
you know, whatever you would call it.
Hmm.
And that's one of those things that I really strive to see more of
Hmm.
because I'm not necessarily one side over the other. I am necessarily every human has so much potential and
Sure.
a wonderful life that they deserve to live,
Hmm.
and nothing should ever stop them.
Right.
So I try to take notice of the issues that I recognize are either trending or kind of in the big spotlight for now.
Hmm.
And I don't, that perception is one of those things I just don't necessarily hear enough of. I hear
Hmm.
more debate and argument, less of, yes, this is an issue to be recognized, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this has to be the primary focus when it
Right.
comes down to your experience.
Hmm.
So thank you so
Well, and it
much.
definitely should be talked about if it is someone's experience or, what's happened to them and how to make that better. And I just think too, like it's interesting. I've talked to Francisco about this. You brought him up, but kind of being the change you want to see. And we only have, I mean, I have a very relatively small circle of influence here, but it's like, if you want to see women being able to, like we've talked about, go out and do whatever, to be the CEO of the business, be the leaders, then you try to have some influence on that in your circle, or model that as much as you can, and I've just realized that's just the best way to kind of hopefully send out maybe a trickle effect.
Yes, and
Um,
you've also recognized, and that's another one of those stigmas that I really enjoy breaking is this whole Hollywood idea of one person
mm,
versus the world.
mm-hmm,
I think a lot of people have a misconception, whether man or woman, that to be a leader, you always have to be the most intelligent and in control at every moment for
mm-hmm,
everything. I mean, your perception has hit so many
mm-hmm,
phenomenal points that I like to point out because I would like for people to go back if maybe because it's easy to miss, and kind of think about when they listen to the words that you're saying and the experience that you're sharing, because you ask for help.
mm-hmm.
You You
Yes.
know that you can have the influence, but you also recognize that you can't necessarily help
And you
everybody.
don't know everything.
You don't know
Even with
everything.
my experience, I don't know half of it,
Yes.
right?
And
You
there
have
are
to.
moments where you have to ask questions, and even moments where you have to say, you know what, I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Which is another thing I've noticed for some people is such a rarity, especially in like kind of somewhat more of the employment world.
Mm-hmm.
People think you're crazy when you ask a lot of questions. People think that for you to say, "Oh, I messed this up," it's all of a sudden like, "Oh, well, that's gonna have to go on your eval." But it's so necessary, and it's just necessary, and it's normal, and
Mm-hmm.
it's great as a matter
Mm-hmm.
of fact. So that perception for that, I think, could be
Mm-hmm. Well, and
shifted
you
a
just said
lot.
as the leader, you know everything. I think it's the opposite of that. I think that the leader should be the one that's always striving to learn more and more, um, and to become better. Like I just think for me, and this is just my personality again, it's I'm never satisfied with, oh, we've hit this enrollment, or oh, we won this award, or oh, whatever it is.
Tell him, Miss Heidi, because that's not
I
what
mean,
it's about,
it's
right?
not what it's about. I mean, and again, like I said, you can always be better. And I mean, it can be a blessing and a curse, because it's a constant like, oh, got to be better, better, better. Um, but that's just something that I think keeps me striving for more, because the awards, I mean, that's great and it really is great, but that's just not what it is for me, or the
Yes.
numbers or the business part, or that's it's all wonderful, but it's just how can you be better? How can you serve other people? And now that's kind of where I'm going more is, okay, now how can I serve a little more? And we're working on a program I'm really excited about that's kind of going in a different direction, for children and young people with just various disabilities. And I'm just looking for ways to just kind of branch out a little bit and serve others a little more. And I'm just in a different way, but I mean, that kind of went off on a tangent, but yeah, I just think that you people have this perception that, well, if you're the leader or the boss or whatever, that you are supposed to have all the answers. And I just don't see it that way. I think you need to be the one who knows when you need to ask, like, get more guidance or get more training. I mean, I'm still training, or ask, like you said, ask questions. Like I'm in like the group I talked about earlier. Those people are at the top of their game and are constantly asking questions. How can we do this better? How do you do it? It's collaboration and just figuring out where to go for those answers and who you want to surround yourself with. That's another huge thing, is just surrounding yourself with the right people, in hiring. It's hiring the right people, trying to get people who are smarter than me, better than me, and surround myself with those people. That's huge too. But yeah, I think the leader is the one who needs to be the one trying to find out more or constantly being better.
I'm not going to ruin that point. I want to keep that exactly where it is. And I'm as you're saying this, I'm sitting here like that's going in a short. That's I need a way for this to attract the public because that was so beautiful, so important, and so powerful. It Thank you, Miss Heidi. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I think I have not been keeping track of time like I usually do, so this might even be in two parts. So let's do the closing question.
Okay.
I don't feel like, unless you feel like there's anything that you gave so much advice, so much perception. My normal question is, oh, what is one thing you would tell younger people? But we've talked on all that.
Hmm.
Is there anything, because you had mentioned like something you're working on, is there anything that you want to share for people to expect? Anything you have coming? Is there anything that somebody should be on the lookout for, or even should look into to either buy tickets, more information? Is there anything like in future plans that you'd like to share?
Well, the biggest one is just what I talked about. We're in starting a partnership very soon to start a class, or hopefully in the future classes, for children and young people with just different abilities or disabilities to be able to come in and take a dance class and perform in our showcase and do all of the things. And I'm just really excited about that. Um, for whatever reason, I've been hesitant just because I wanted to make sure we did it in the right way. And I wanted to get more knowledge and just, I like to have all the information before starting something. But I feel like now is the right time to do it. And I'm just really excited that we'll provide a space for these children to be able to dance. and also provide an opportunity for some of our teenagers to be able to work with these children. I think that's going to be a huge um, opportunity for them. You want to talk about being appreciative of what you have. I think that we all need to see that sometimes and just be around people um, just with different abilities to appreciate our abilities, but also see in other people just something special, and have the opportunity to work with them. So I think that's going to be transformative for our teenagers here who are able to volunteer and get involved with that program. But that's really something I'm excited about. And I'm definitely looking for just, like I said, just different ways to serve people and just provide new opportunities for people. And right now I'm just really interested in working with our teachers, working with other studio owners. Sometimes I can see myself like going into that at some point, maybe just partnering with different studio owners to help them with whatever they're struggling with, or yeah, I can just see that in my future too. I like to work with other studio owners for sure.
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you so much for all of it, and I look forward to seeing what you're going to do in the future. And I definitely vouch for the community service, especially for the teenagers, because there was one that we pushed heavily. I remember. Shout out to Mary Mac of
Yes.
Huntsville, Alabama.
Hmm.
So yes, that's phenomenal. That's beautiful. That's amazing.
Yes.
And one last time, I've said this probably 100 times already. Thank you, Miss Heidi.
Thank you
It
so
was a
much.
pleasure.
I appreciate it.
But, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will see you guys again next week. And with that, ETVT out.
ETVT coming from the heart. Hot waves crash like a tidal wave. Jump into the dark, it's time to rave.